Dr. Don Russell. I'm a professional psychotherapist, a trainer and a professional speaker on topics of trauma, trauma recovery, vicarious trauma. And today I want to talk to you about mental health in 2021, and the theme is hacking the nervous system for mental health. Now, we made it through 2020, and I think we should be pretty proud of ourselves for actually surviving 2020. And 2021 has rolled around, and here we are, still living with the pandemic, the threat of virus all around us, and also living with, in some parts of the world, some pretty challenging restrictions. Now, when we talk about mental health in 2021, I want to share some thoughts on two different themes. One is the theme of just the losses that we've experienced through this pandemic. We have all experienced lots of different kinds of losses, and they're impacting us. And really, it's not a stretch to say that we are all grieving losses from the pandemic. And then the other theme I want to develop in this conversation is the theme of this pandemic really being a collective trauma experience. And I want to take a few moments to unpack that, what that means. But most importantly, stay tuned to the end of this video, where I want to provide some very, very doable strategies that can help to improve your mental health, regulate your emotional well-being, using your body to accomplish mental health. Now, when you think about what we've experienced in the last year, since March of 2020, take a moment and think about the differences between your life at the beginning of 2020 and your life now in the beginning of 2021. For lots of us, we have limited social contact with our friends and loved ones. That's a loss. I have heard lots of stories of family members and loved ones getting sick, being in the hospital, and friends and family can't visit them because of the security and the restrictions that have been imposed in the hospital. Definitely restrictions keeping us from traveling as freely as we did a year ago. We've experienced the loss of physical touch. Again, I've had lots of people say, "Hey, you know what I really miss most is just the ability to hug friends and family when I meet them." That is just scratching the surface of the intangible losses that we've experienced as a result of this pandemic. As you are hearing me describe just a few of those, I'm sure that your mind is going to think of a bunch of other losses that you've experienced. So I want to leave that there, and I just want to sort of validate and confirm for you that we are living with losses, we're grieving losses, and so we're in a state of grief. If this was a loss of a loved one, we would be going to a funeral and doing all of the funeral rituals. But these kinds of losses, there is no funeral for them, and that actually makes it more difficult to come to terms with how we have lost things. In addition to grief and loss, I'm going to make the case that this pandemic that we have been experiencing in 2020 and now in 2021 is also a collective trauma experience. Now, that might seem like a really heavy label, but bear with me and let's see if it makes sense. Here's some of the things that make an event that is, potentially traumatizing, actually traumatizing to the mind and the body and the nervous system. The first sort of feature of a traumatizing event is that what I call the "I didn't see it coming" phenomenon. The fact that we didn't have a chance to prepare for it, we didn't have a chance to orient towards it, it kind of ambushed us. And for the vast majority of us, this pandemic definitely fits into that category. Another dimension that makes an event a traumatizing event is the aspect that we feel helpless and powerless in response to the event or the circumstance. So the obvious examples are a motor vehicle accident or sexual assault. You know, the victim of those experiences is genuinely helpless and powerless. Shift your thinking to this pandemic, and same thing. Well, you know what? Individually, there's really nothing we can do. We can wear masks and we can social distance in an attempt to protect ourselves, but really this virus is it's out there. We never know who's contaminated, who's not contaminated, and we feel, I think most of us feel, a profound sense of helplessness and powerlessness, and are thinking we just have to find a way to get through this, right? Which is sort of a phrase that implies powerlessness. Third dimension that is sort of one of the factors that makes such an event traumatizing. This is more of a result of, and that is that it's a trauma event shifts a person's worldview. It changes a person's worldviews so that now the world around them feels unsafe. The sense of security, emotional, psychological security that they used to have, they no longer have. It just feels unsafe. And hence, the person's nervous system goes into this state of hypervigilance, basically looking out for the next clue that something terrible is going to happen. And I mean, really, in this case, we're looking around and we're waiting for the next piece of news on CNN about the virus, and lo and behold, we're hearing about mutant strains or variant strains of the pandemic. There you go. The world just starts to seem unsafe. And finally, as I've already suggested, one of the other features that makes an event a traumatizing event is that our nervous system responds in this protective defensive response. We're all familiar with the fight, flight, freeze response. Well, that is part of this defensive protective response that our nervous system automatically does. There's more to it than that, but that's a good start. And as I've talked with lots of people over the past nearly a year now, I've heard and observed people's trauma response systems activated in the nervous system. Okay, so there's a starting place to start to understand that, yeah, we are grieving losses and we're also suffering a collective trauma. Now, one of the next things I just want to sort of highlight and notice together is that both of those responses, the grief and the trauma, what they do is they create negative emotions. And when we are experiencing negative emotions, there is this, what psychologists call thought-action repertoire that is associated with any particular emotion. Really quickly, when we feel happy or joyful, we tend to move towards other people, and other people tend to move towards us, because everybody likes to be around people that are happy, generally speaking. Conversely, when we are feeling angry, upset, anxious, or fearful, the thought-action repertoire is actually a distancing, a separating, a withdrawal. We just kind of don't really like to be around angry people, and most angry people don't like to be around others. And so, one of the automatic effects of both the grief and loss related to the pandemic and the trauma related to the pandemic is this unconscious tendency to withdraw from other people. And that is, well, in some cases it's being mandated by governments, but even if it's not mandated by governments, there's still this automatic response that we just tend to start separating ourselves from each other. It looks depressive in some cases, but also generally it's a separating. Now, what I want to do now is I want to shift because I want to provide for you some ideas that you can do today to kind of push back against these effects, push back against the mental health impacts of the pandemic, and I think what I'm going to provide for you in the next few minutes is going to be some non-obvious ones that you may not have thought of and may not um, recognize automatically as being helpful. The first one I want to talk about is called diaphragmatic breathing or parasympathetic breathing, or let's face it, let's keep it simple, let's just call it belly breathing. Seems really simple, seems too simple to be helpful, but I promise if you try it for 2 minutes, you'll find that it actually is helpful. What it is essentially is recognizing that when we're anxious, our muscles of our chest area tend to tighten up and we tend to end up breathing very shallowly, kind of breathing up here. And so this alternate way of breathing is kind of using all of the lungs and really breathing in and out from the belly. The way I instruct my clients to do this is to imagine that they have a balloon in their belly, and as they inhale a breath, they're inflating that balloon, and as they exhale the breath, they're deflating the balloon. And doing that slowly, so each breath cycle might be 6 seconds long, so 10 breaths a minute, or even slower if you're comfortable doing that even slower. And importantly, that the exhale is a little bit longer than the inhale, because that exhale is what activates our relaxation response in our body. So pause the video if you like, and just try that for 2 minutes, breathing from the belly, so the belly's going in and out, the shoulders aren't going up and down. There's the first one. Second one, really, really simple and also surprisingly effective. It's drinking a beverage, water, through a straw. It's that simple. First of all of us could probably stand to drink more water, so you're getting more water, that's important. Most of us are sort of living lives slightly dehydrated, and so secondly, swallowing water is activating part of the process of the digestive system, right? That's the beginning of the digestive system. And the digestive system is managed by the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the same part of our nervous system that manages relaxation. So basically, if we are relaxed, then our body is more tuned to digest food and sort of get nutrients out of the food and all of that stuff. If we're in a fight, flight, freeze state, it's like our body says, well, what I had for dinner doesn't really matter if I don't survive the next 10 minutes, so let's shut off the digestive system. That's kind of a description of what happens if we're highly stressed, and conversely, what happens if we're relaxed, we digest better. So drinking water, swallowing anything, frankly, is a little hack to the nervous system to get it to be a little bit more relaxed. Third feature of drinking from a straw maybe sound a little bit weird, might sound a little bit weird to you, but it's a sucking activity. And the sucking activity may just kind of remind us of when we were, unconsciously remind us of when we were a very small infant sucking milk. And so presumably that was a relaxing and comforting activity when we were infants, and so the sucking from a straw might be activating the same sensation. The fourth exercise that you can do on your own, very, very easy, doesn't even take any equipment, you can do it today, is using guided imagery or guided meditation to calm your nervous system. So I have a memory in mind of a time when I was hiking in the woods and I paused for a little rest on a hillside. It was a pine forest. It was a beautiful summer day, and I just remember the sights. There was the green trees, the green moss on the forest floor, a little bit of blue sky peeking through the treetops, maybe some clouds drifting by. I also remember the smell of the moss and of the pine forest. I also remember the sounds, some birds in the trees, a distant loon on a lake. And so when I go through the different senses like I just did, I'm remembering, but I'm remembering in a sensory way. And if I remember in a sensory way, then I will also bring back the feeling, like actually the emotion that I was feeling at that time, and I'll recreate it in my mind and body and my nervous system. So I will feel basically, just as calm and relaxed as I did having my granola bar on the forest floor. Guided imagery and meditation is something that's used across all kinds of religious and philosophical systems. It is very, very powerful because it takes advantage of this faculty of imagination that human beings have to bring forth something from the past and relive it in the present. Of course, it can also work. We can bring something from the future that we haven't experienced yet, but we're just imagining what it would be like. And that can work the same way. Here's the next and the last one for this video. We'll get into some more some other time, but here's one more exercise that we can do to downregulate, to relax our nervous system in times of pandemic in 2021. And so here's what it is. It's simply play and laughter and humor, using humor. You can get that anyway. You can be kicking back and laughing with friends if you can get together with friends in the pandemic context. You can watch funny videos on YouTube. You can play with a child if you have a small child. Your small child will love to play with you at any time, I promise. If you have a cat or a dog as a pet, they are wonderful sources of play and laughter. We simply have to first of all, we have to be mindful that we need to use this exercise. And then secondly, we just have to be intentional to choose to let ourselves go there and kind of access our inner small child to laugh and to play and to just enjoy the present moment. Think for a moment about a child playing, maybe yourself when you were a small child, maybe a child of yours if you have children or had children. When they're in play, they are completely lost in the moment and they are completely unconscious of themselves and they're completely unconscious of any sort of stressful events around them. They're just lost in play. That comes natural and it's easy for children, but all of us have the ability to do that if we simply recognize the need to go there and intentionally go there. All right, thank you so much for listening and watching this video. I would love for you to leave a comment in the comment section. I would love for you to subscribe so that you're one of the first to hear about my next video. Thanks so much and have a fantastic day.